According to World Food Program, the situation in Sudan is critical as nearly 18 million people in the country are currently suffering from acute hunger. Out of these, approximately 5 million are facing emergency levels of hunger due to conflicts in regions like Khartoum, Darfur and Kordofan. Let's now discuss this. We're now joined by World Food Program Sudan spokesperson Leni Kinzli. Leni, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. So with nearly 5 million people in Sudan close to famine, how does the humanitarian relief process entail? I mean, given just the scale of the need on the ground, I mean, what impact also is this having on aid agency?
So the level of the hunger catastrophe that is unfolding in Sudan is absolutely unprecedented. Now, the numbers that you mentioned, 5 million people on the brink of starvation, basically, this is an estimate from last December. Now in Sudan, we have started the lean season where food becomes less available, and we are expecting to see hunger skyrocket even more over the coming months. And particularly in conflict hotspots for aid agencies, it's been so difficult to get aid supplies through because of access restrictions, access constraints, but also because of ongoing fighting and lack of safety and security guarantees. So we are faced with an immense challenge, unprecedented levels of needs in an extremely complex operating environment. And quite frankly, we are running out of time to avert the worst of the hunger catastrophe that is impending.
Which regions are most affected? And of course, what support are aid agencies getting in as far as that protection that you're talking about, from, I would imagine, the governments and also neighboring countries, perhaps?
So as WFP, as the world's largest humanitarian agency, we are providing emergency food and nutrition assistance wherever we can. And the regions that are the most affected are where the conflict is ongoing. In Khartoum, the capital, in the Kordofan, which is south central, but also especially in Darfur, which was already so vulnerable before because so many people were displaced there from the Darfur conflict that started in the early 2000s. For example, in the year 2022, we provided emergency assistance to over 5 million people in the Darfur region. And that is before the current conflict exacerbated these needs. And what we urgently need is access to these locations so that we can continue this type of support, especially the food assistance, as people really are resorting to the most extreme measures to survive, as you can imagine. Eating grass in some cases. We've received reports of people eating leftover nutshells. And there's really a looming catastrophe. And so we urgently need to get those aid supplies through.
Now, on a daily basis, just talk to us about what the threats posed by this escalating conflict in Sudan are. And I would imagine as aid agencies, you would have some line of, of information in as far as these warring factions are concerned. And if at all, there are safe passages that they would allow you to cross from time to time.
So in terms of corridors or safe passages, these have been very intermittent. For example, we were able to support around 50,000 people with food rations in Khartoum in the month of March, but it is not a constant guarantee that we have. In Darfur, for example, we had a cross-border operation from Chad into West Darfur, and then some permissions were revoked by authorities in Port Sudan. We had to reestablish operations via a different border crossing, which is also very challenging. Routes are very long via different border crossings. And this is just to give you a picture of the complexities in securing these safe passages. So you can imagine how hard it is to get that assistance in. And in terms of what that looks like on the ground for civilians, especially when conflict spills over into different areas, it means people, many who have already fled once or twice, fleeing again. Currently, Sudan is also the world's worst displacement crisis. Nearly 9 million people have had to flee from their homes in just a matter of a year. That's the entire population of New York City, for example. Many selling whatever they had left to afford a bus ride to the next safe location, just in a matter of months after to have to flee again because the conflict between the RSF and SAF keeps spilling over into new areas.
I mean, just despite this, deepening food crisis, we're not seeing the kind of international scrutiny and outcries we're seeing in other regions who are in war. And I'm going to reference here what we're seeing in Gaza and what we're seeing in Ukraine as an example. I mean, to what extent are you concerned about that? Because I would imagine this constrains on the funding too.
Yeah, so most definitely there needs to be more concerted international attention on Sudan, especially given the level of this crisis. And we know that it has been very difficult also to get reports from some of these access-constrained areas. And that also doesn't make it easier to share with the world what is happening in the country. But we have been calling on the international community to step up advocacy, to raise awareness, and also to step up funding. On the 15th of April, there was an international conference where an additional $2 billion was pledged for the humanitarian response in Sudan. And that kind of momentum needs to continue because the crisis in Sudan is largely being ignored or put, let's say, on a lesser level of attention as other competing crises.